Hi, my name is Catherine, and you have stumbled onto Accounting My Stitches, my YouTube channel where I talk about all things cross stitch. Today is Tuesday, June 3rd, and I am here for my second Flosstube video. I realized in the last video that I gave you no context on anything. I just sped through all of them. So I'm going to try to give you some context today. We'll start with my first whip, my Compass with Corals by LightUnicornDesigns. Since you've last seen it, I'll put a picture up. I have worked on it 571 additional stitches. It's 2 weeks worth of whip into shape. As I talked about last time, I've been working in advance a little bit. So I did this week's stitching this past weekend for whip into shape. And here it is. Now it's at 75% also. 75% complete, which I'm very excited about. As I mentioned, this is my Whip into Shape project, and I've done the math that by the time Whip into Shape is over, this will be a finish. So I'm very excited about that. I actually found this pattern. So back to context. Like I mentioned in my last video, my sister actually got me into cross stitch. She picked it up as her COVID hobby, and I wasn't really interested in it until, one day I was. And so back in, it was either the end of 2022 or maybe mid 2023, something like that. My sister was looking at cross stitch patterns for herself on Etsy, and she found this designer, LightUnicornDesigns, and they were having a buy two, get one free sale. And so she looked and she'd found two patterns that she really liked and she wanted to stitch for herself, but she couldn't really find a third pattern that was speaking to her. So she texted me and she said, "Hey, look at this Etsy shop and find a design that you like, and I will stitch it for you one day." Like, absolutely no promises on timeline or anything, but like, there's a free pattern, and so go pick it and I'll stitch it for you one day. And I was like, okay, sure. So I went through their page, and that's actually the pattern that I found, my Compass with Corals. My sister never got around to stitching it before I was prepared to stitch it. But she did send it to me because she's not planning on stitching it at all. And so yeah, that's how I found that pattern. It lives in this project bag by Emily the Pop-Up Stitcher. I bought off of her Etsy shop. I just thought it was really fitting for this design, and also, as you will learn, I am really obsessed with all things nautical and like ships and the ship steering wheels and lighthouses and more ocean than beach, but obsessed with all things nautical and oceany. Here's the inside fabric. I do really like it. I feel like it might be better for someone with a bit more hoop discipline than I have. I feel like if I leave it in the hoop in here, it just like feels like this whole thing is kind of poofy. And also with the threads on the, I keep them, well, I actually found on the internet a way to make bobbins kind of act as flash drops. I guess I'll maybe show that to you in a future video. But so I have all of my bobbins on a ring here. And when I put this whole thing in here, it just kind of, it's like thick. And it, sometimes I feel like, am I gonna break this fabric? But this is a new bag, and like, it does feel high quality, so maybe not. But it is kept in this beautiful bag, which is very exciting. And also, I started this as a center start, and I went on a cruise with my family this past January. It was like a 12-day cruise out of Mobile, which is where my family lives. I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. They're in Mobile. And they wanted to take it honestly because it was a 12-day cruise out of where they live. And so I wanted it to be a cruise start, but I was so excited about it that I ended up starting it a few days early, but it still was a January 2025 start. It was a center start. I wanted to grid it because I've gridded most of my other projects, but I've been using this water soluble marker, which has worked out great. I haven't had any issues with it. I know there are mixed reviews on that, but I haven't had any issues. But I was afraid because it's an opalescent Ada that some of the flecks might like the pen might get caught on a fleck. And I don't know, my brain told me, what if it doesn't come off because of the sparkles or just like the extra texture? And it was just not a risk that I was willing to take. And so I looked online for what are my other options. And of course, I found that they sell special cross stitch, like a thread, like a fishing line. kind of thing, but like special for cross stitch that's meant for gridding. I also found that a lot of people use sulky, but for whatever reason, I didn't. Well, I knew that the cross stitch thing, a lot of people said, well, that's the one that's like meant for cross stitch. That's more expensive. You can just use regular fishing line. Honestly, like that doesn't pierce. And I was like, okay, great, let me try that. So I got some regular fishing line, but it's green, so I guess it's not regular. And I started to grit it on that. Thankfully, I only got like like in the process of it, it kind of like slipped out. But thankfully it did, because when it did, I saw that it left some green residue in the like 2 or 3 holes that it had already been in. And I was like, oh, okay, not doing that. And so I decided that I couldn't really grit this project. I would just have to be really careful. And so far it's worked out. There have, of course, been a few personalizations, but that pattern is really forgiving, I found. And so I make the change and move on, and it hasn't caused any big problems. It's also pretty confetti heavy, so yeah, it's very forgiving. And that is everything I wanted to say about that. Moving on to my tree of books. Here is what it looks like the last time you saw it. And now, sorry, I'm fighting with the magnet here. And here is what it looks like now. It is currently 7% done. I've done 1,813 stitches since you've last seen it. Let me look up close. It's by xCountingtheStarsx on Etsy. And yeah, like I said, it's now 7% done. This is also my first corner start. I, before now, have always been a center start girl because that's how I was taught, frankly. But watching all the Flosstubes, and a lot of people will do a corner start or a top middle start, and I thought about it and looked into it, and I know a lot of people have chosen their spot because that's where they can bring the needle up in a clean hole with like as few to no stitches as possible, and then they could put the needle down, and I heard some people call it like a dirty hole, where there's other threads, flosses already there. And so with that method, I decided that I'd have to be either bottom left or top right, because I do actually stitch backwards to the way that I've noticed a lot of other floss tubers do. Like I'll do top left to bottom right, and then bottom right to top left. And so I just have noticed that that's backwards of the way that a lot of people do it, but that's just the way that I was taught, and here we are. But so that's why I wanted to do the bottom left start, so that I can start, bring it up in a nice easy hole, and I've been enjoying that so far. And so as you saw this time, it is on a scroll broad. I was very excited to order it with such a big, and so this is my first proper full coverage. As you saw in my previous video, I have worked on some full coverage-esque projects, my Tennessee, my Iceland. They're full coverage in their thing, but this is my first like full square, full coverage project. And I wanted a scroll frame so I didn't have to be moving the hoop around so many times. And also I've just seen other people use a scroll frame and it looks nice. And so I wanted to try it, but I also didn't want to immediately jump in with one of the more expensive scroll frames. And of course, it's not just the frame, it's then also the stand. And so what I found is it's a lap / table stand that I got off of 123 Stitch. It was like $30. So obviously not the highest of quality, and I have had some problems getting it set up and all the things, figuring out the tension and whatever, but it's been good enough for now. I will continue to use it. And if at some point I decide that I've used it for long enough and I really do like it and that it's worth investing in something nicer, I will do that. But yeah, so that's part of my haul. I was very excited to receive it when it came in. So I found this project on Etsy, like I said, by the designer xCountingtheStarsx, when I was looking for that medium project. After I'd finished the Michaels like easy beginner kits, my sister actually sent me a few, or like pointed me in the direction of the DMC website with their free patterns. And so specifically, she pointed me to this pattern it's like a girl reading a book, maybe leaning up against a stack of books with a cat. I have a little cat. And so she was like, oh, like this, you might enjoy this. And so I liked it, but maybe not enough to actually stitch it. And so what I searched on Etsy was just some kind of book related pattern. I didn't really know what I would find. I was just, looking on Etsy. And so I found this big full coverage tree of books stained glass thing on Etsy when I was looking for that medium project. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. I like hearted it, but I just knew, I was like, I don't really feel ready to do this today. And so it was in that search that I found my little bookmark, my ticket to read. And so, it was through that book related search. And then earlier this year, I got a notification from Etsy that the pattern was on 50% sale because I'd hearted it. And I was like, oh my gosh, of course, the original price was like $6. And so 50% off was $3. It's not like it saved me that much money. But I was like, it's on sale. I have to buy it. And also, it's beautiful. And it was planned as my birthday start in June. But long story short, I decided to start it early just because it's so beautiful. And also because my friend Charlie with Stitching with Charlie, she, for her birthday in May, was doing a stitch on something nature related. And I was like, well, it has a tree in it. So that means it's nature related. So that means I should just start it. So yeah, that's how it ended up getting started in May, but I'm very excited about it. Also, I have decided to get rid of all the goals for the foreseeable future. I had been planning to stitch go this project, but I'll admit I maybe didn't think everything through all the way. Currently, my average stitching in a month is something like 6 to 8 maybe thousand stitches, which is low for a lot of Flosstubers. But so with the WIP Go numbers for June were 21 and 23. And so put that together, that's 4,400 stitches I would need to do on this one project in the month of June, on top of the whip into shape numbers and my secret stitch. And I was like, this is a little too close to how many stitches I actually do in a month that it's uncomfortable. And that's too much pressure to put on myself. And so the only goal I'm keeping is the whip into shape because that's manageable. And if at any point I decide I don't want to do it, I don't have to do it. Even my secret stitch, I'm getting rid of the goal, but also it is more than 75% done right now. The recipient doesn't know it's coming. And so it's one of those, if I miss the goal, I can always give it to them later and they, didn't know it was coming anyway. But it is 75% of the way done. And so I expect it probably will get done in a reasonable amount of time, possibly on the same timeline, but just removing the goal is really what would help me in this situation. So that's what I'm doing. Let me see what else I got. And so I actually do have a new start, which I talked about last time. It is Yesterday I Was Clever by Tiny Modernist. Here it is now, if it will come into focus. No? Okay, well, maybe it's just not going to come into focus. But this is 449 stitches, which I did in 2 days. It is now 8% complete. I started it just a couple days ago on May 31st. And yeah, when I got rid of all of my other goals, I was like, I really want to start this project, but I haven't yet because I have all these other goals that I want to do. And I was like, you know what? If we're getting rid of goals, let's just do it. So that's what I did, and I am very excited about it, happy to have that started. And honestly, what pushed me to it, I went to the thrift store this past weekend and I found this beautiful frame, which is kind of close to the frame that it was stylized in, and it will fit perfectly. And yeah, it was on sale for $7, which is a good price for this big 11 by 14 frame. And yeah, it came from Old Time Pottery and apparently was originally $13 and maybe it just never sold. So it landed in this thrift store. But yeah, so this is my haul, this and my scroll frame. And yes, very, very excited. I think the project is going to look beautiful in this frame and just excited to have that when the time comes. That is it for all of the stitching things. If you're not here for life stuff or more just me talking, I will see you in a future video. But if you want to stick around, here we go. So I wanted to tell you about how I discovered Flosstube. So like I said, I'd done some of the basic Michaels ones. I'd done a bookmark, and then I stitched my Tennessee project, which was the project that really made me fall in love with cross stitch. Like I said, I come from a long line of stitchers, and so as I was finishing it, my mom said to me, you know, you really need to wash and iron it before you do whatever it is you're going to do with it. And I didn't know how to do that. I've never done that before with my cross stitch projects. And so I was like, how do I do it? And as I mentioned, they are about 4 hours away from me in Mobile. And so my mom, I guess, just did a YouTube search or a Google or whatever of how to wash and iron cross stitch projects. And she found a video that she liked, and she sent it to me and said, this is the way that I would do it, but maybe I would make this little change, or this is how I used to do it. But here you go, here's the video. And the video she sent me was a Catkin and Lily video on how to do it. And so I watched it and I used that method and all was well. But then I thought to myself, just like, I wonder what other videos are on this channel. And that's how I discovered Flosstube. And then, from there, just other channels that she recommended and the YouTube algorithm and, all the ways I was on my way. I found all of the channels, and I've really enjoyed hanging out with everyone. Also, it occurred to me that in the last video I mentioned, I made these cross stitches with locations, and I want to put pictures of the trips from there up, but I didn't actually say anything else about the trip. And so we will start with my Tennessee trip, which was the Tennessee project that I showed you last time. I visited with my mom in October of 2021, and we did a lot of hiking and just saw some things around the Gatlinburg area. That's where we visited, Gatlinburg, Tennessee. And so hopefully I'm putting up some pictures of that trip. There were a lot to choose from, but I had to narrow it down. And then moving on to Iceland, the Iceland project, I went on a trip there with my family this past summer 2024, I guess, since it's basically summer now. And we flew into Reykjavik, and we drove all the way down to, I don't even remember what it's called. It's across the street from Diamond Beach, some kind of lagoon, Glacier Lagoon, that's what it's called. We drove all the way down and, stopping along the way, seeing all of these beautiful things, so many waterfalls in Iceland, and then turned around and drove back to Reykjavik and hung out there for a couple more days before we flew home. But so that was in June of 2024, and now you have some context and some fun pictures from that trip. And then I wanted to shout out just a few of the people who were nice enough to comment on my last video and who have Flosstube channels that I hadn't heard about and maybe you haven't heard about either. I am shouting out Champagne and Stitches, also Curly Q Stitches, and Ditsy Daisy Crafts. All three of those channels were great, and I really appreciated them commenting on my last video. Also, just in general, some other people that I've been watching are Holly Wally Whoopsie. She's new, but she's so much fun. Dances with Floss, I'm also obsessed with. I feel like not nearly enough people know about them. They're just very high energy and so much fun. I love them. And Butterfly Stitches / Cotton and Clay UK, I feel like y'all might know about her. She's doing the Summer of Stitching box that some people are getting. And I think those three channels are great. And also, I realized I never fully addressed, I don't think, my channel name is Accounting My Stitches, because I am actually an accountant, believe it or not. I'm a CPA, like I said, living in Birmingham, Alabama. And in my day job, I work in commercial real estate, doing accounting for things like strip malls and office buildings, some medical buildings, some industrial buildings, just all different types of commercial real estate that the company I work for manages, and I do accounting for some of those properties. And that's all I have to share for today. I did want to leave you with, it's an old-timey saying, but I like it, and I'm putting a little stitchy spin on it. What I wish for you in the coming times ahead is the serenity to accept the mistakes you cannot change, the courage to frog the ones you can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I'll see you next time. Bye.